Hi, this is Zoe Routh, and this is episode number 22, all about what's happening to men.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
Welcome. I'm learning how to speak Australian still after 20 years. Can you believe it? Every week I learn how to pronounce something differently or better. Last week it was Goondiwindi. Now, if you're not from Australia, this is actually written Goondiwindi. Goondiwindi. Yeah, that's not how you pronounce it. Apparently, as I get ticked off, it's like when I first arrived and I saw, oh, look, there's a kookaburra. And everybody fell on their butts laughing at me because it's not kookaburra, it's kookaburra. See, look, I can't even pronounce it properly. Anyway, the big news around here is that we are just over a week away from the big Edge of Leadership Conference, and I'm so excited for this event. It's going to be huge. We're nearly sold out. And what I'm most excited about is bringing together people who have a really strong concern for the community. And they want to be better leaders and contribute and build connections in the community around social agenda, about making a difference, about business bridging that gap between what they do for work and what they can do in the community as corporate citizens. So it's going to be great. I look forward to sharing all the reports with you in just over a week. Now, you're going to want to write this down, and it's the show notes URL. This is going to be zoerouth.com/podcast/men. Today I've got a ton of resources for you, so you want to make sure you're going to jot that down so you can get all the links in the show notes. So what I'm reading right now that's totally rocking my world, the first is Marie Kondo. And if you haven't come across her before, she's this amazing Japanese lady who is obsessed with decluttering and and tidying. She calls it tidying and creating a tidy house. And somebody on Facebook put me on to her who said that she had transformed her life by following Marie's process. I'm like, right, I like decluttering. I like a tidy house. Let's see what this woman has to offer. So I Googled her and found some videos on how to fold clothes. I know this doesn't sound revolutionary, but it was. I immediately went to task to tidy up my entire closet and refold every item, including Rob's, my husband's. And I can't believe the difference it has made in terms of my sense of peace and bliss in the house. Well, her philosophy goes beyond folding clothes. It goes to basically honoring everything in your home so that there is nothing that you're tolerating. Everything has the thrill of I love it. Does it make me feel exhilarated or happy to have this thing in my home? It's a beautiful way of living and being. So I advocate her work, and it's about bringing more consciousness to everyday moments in a place of attitude of gratitude. So we've heard it all before. She's got a practical application. Love it, love it, love it. Next book I'm reading is Tools of Titans. That's Tim Ferriss's new book. And it is epic. It's huge. It's basically a summary of a lot of the interviews he's done over the last few years with these titans, as he calls them, individuals who had amazing results in their respective fields. And he divides the book into 3 sections: healthy, wealthy, and wise, with a summary of the recommendations from each author in each of those areas. It's good. I recommend it. 2 more books. Next one is Stacey Barr's new one called Prove It. Stacey Barr is a performance measurement specialist, and her new book, Prove It, is a fabulous handbook for leaders who actually want to develop strategy that works, strategy that has measures that proves what it's trying to do in the world. It's such a practical, revolutionary text. Don't be fooled by how understated it appears. It will transform your world if you're a leader who needs to design strategy and put in place a way of tracking to see how you're going with it. It's as simple and as complex as that. And the last book is Stories at Work, or Stories for Work by Gabrielle Dolan. And I don't know, this might be Gabrielle's third or fourth book. And this fabulous little book is a handbook for influence. Really, it's how to use stories in workplace context so that you can galvanize people or inspire them to do the things that they need to do. Very useful, very practical, highly recommended. So all those links, again, will be in the show notes. So the big juicy thing for today's podcast is what I'm pondering. And I wrote a blog about it this week, and I thought it was worth also podcasting about it. And it's the unspoken pain of men. Yeah, men don't get a lot of airtime in some ways in terms of what's bothering them and what are their challenges. In fact, I went to see Simon Sinek when he visited in Sydney. And my question to him is, we hear a lot about challenges for women in leadership. What about challenges for men? His answer was that they're the same as women, but in reverse. He said that men feel this compulsion to, or a need to be macho, to be the hero, to have all the answers. And he said it's to their detriment. It isolates them and puts them on edge and basically puts a lot of stress on them. He said that one of the biggest breakthroughs he made was when he started admitting he didn't know everything and that he could ask for help. So that sort of kicked off an exploration for me about what's going on for men and what we can do about it. So I've got some observations and some questions and not yet any conclusions. And I'm hoping that you'll share in the conversation with me to explore this, because I think it's fundamental to the future of our common humanity that we work on this. What is the future of men? What is contemporary manhood? And particularly, what's the future of men in leadership? So I'm in the middle of reading Hannah Rosen's book, The End of Men, where she showcases the rise of women and how women are moving into traditional male roles and not leaving much for men. So men haven't come back the other way and taking over women's roles. And it's left a lot of men upended. And there's some economic pressures that have led to this as well. So with the demise of many manufacturing jobs, traditional domains of men, this identity and role piece has been eroded. So there's lots of interesting context about the shifting sands for men. But what really gets my goat, or what doesn't get my goat, where is that? What is that expression anyway? What challenges me are the statistics, and they're these. More soldiers have died from suicide than, this is in Australia stats, by the way, more soldiers have died from suicide than all the casualties from all wars since 1999. So we're not killing men in wars, they are killing themselves after the war. This is very sobering. More statistics, men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women. The biggest age group after the 85-year-old men age group, which is the largest group, the biggest age group after that are 40 to 55-year-olds, men in their prime productive years. And Aboriginal men have twice the rate than non-Aboriginal men in terms of suicide. So what does this tell us? It tells us that men at the end of their life lose hope and take their own life. And it also shows us, alarmingly, that men in their prime of their life, their prime productive years, 40 to 55, where they should be celebrating and on top of their professional mountaintop, is that for a lot of them, they're extremely challenged and they either take their own lives or suffer in silence. This is extremely disturbing to me. And I think we ought to be concerned as a community about this. What's happening to men? What are the challenges that are leading them to this kind of despair? I think it comes down to 3 major things. One is identity. And this has traditionally always been linked to the male role as provider, as protector, as leader. And these have been eroded by the rise of women. So as women became providers in their own right, often leading their own families, and they became protectors of their own selves and their own children, and leaders in their own right of their own businesses, of their own industries, the erosion of role linked to identity for men has left them wondering, what am I? Who am I? What's my purpose? And I think that if you rise above some of that, it's the same issues for men as for women. Discovering who we are, what we want to experience and explore as human beings is common to both men and women. And yet, women seem to be able to find more purpose in this as we raise the conversation about making sure women get equal opportunity to different career sectors and different career roles. For men, it's a different story. The archetypes of father, warrior, commander, provider, king are dissolving. And these all involve authority and command. So the question is, what does it mean to be a man? Is it biology? Is it physicality? And it's certainly not role anymore. And it's certainly not what we used to associate with being manly, being tough and being brave and being broad-shouldered. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be a man? These are questions I don't have an answer to yet. Maybe you do. And certainly I've seen some other websites where this is of main concern. Ryan Michler's site, orderofman.com, exists to try and answer the solution, to give a guide to men on how they can live their best lives. And Ryan talks about, not ironically, but perhaps it's showcasing what's absent for men. He comes back to the principles, traditional principles of what it means to have a male role. And he says they're to protect, provide, and preside. Protect the family, provide for the family, and preside in leadership roles, because he asserts, in a crisis, you turn to men, you turn to the strong ones. So I think this is a throwback to traditional roles, and yet his following indicates that there's an attraction to this. And yet I think it's not the way of the future. I don't think that this is going to sustain men through the crisis of who men are becoming. So I think there's a need for a new kind of identity, a new kind of purpose for men. And yet there's no answers to this yet, and it's frustrating the crap out of me. I'd love to hear what you think about that. I think the third piece about what's struggling for men is the being part in the world. How does a man be in the world? If he used to have to be strong and protector, and that's no longer appropriate because women find this intimidating or there's no need for it anymore, how then does a man be manly? There's no answer to that yet. What's sort of emerging for me is this idea that perhaps being noble is something we can explore. What does a noble man look like? Somebody who's generous, somebody who's caring, somebody who is strong in their own masculinity and embracing of femininity at the same time. And I think there's perhaps something in that for us to explore. So, like I said, some observations, some questions, not a lot of answers at this stage. And yet I want to know what you think. Drop a comment in the show after the podcast at the podcast page at zoerouth.com/podcast/men, or email me, zoe@innercompass.com.au. I think this conversation needs to be out in the open, not just with women, but with men as well. After I published my blog post, I got so many emails, lots of shares on social media about speaking the unspoken, because men aren't given permission to talk about these issues. They're kind of swept under the carpet as the female dialogue and the female agenda gets showcased, and rightly as it should, because there's still so many injustices in that area. And yet we can't silence men just to allow women the voice. Love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a great week. Live well, lead well.